Were you ever that 1 in 1 million? If so, what is your story? I am a 19-year-old male. In August of last year, I was driving with my sister, when suddenly her face turned cold. "Gavin, your eyes are yellow," I remember her saying. I quickly pulled down the passenger's mirror, and to my horror, 2 yellow eyes radiated back at me. Fast forward, I spent a month being sick. The initial diagnosis was hepatitis A. Went back to the doctor. Nothing was better, things were worse in fact. Was sent to the ER, then to the liver transplant unit at UCSF. By this point my eyes had turned muddy orange, and my pee was the color of a mahogany tree. Anyways, the team of liver doctors at UCSF managed to save my liver. I was diagnosed with autoimmune hepatitis. Oh, and my eyes are white again. Hey, I have that too. I was in the hospital for a solid week and they tested me for everything under the sun until they finally realized that I had autoimmune hepatitis. I was in so much pain leading up to going to the hospital that when I walked, I could feel every bone in my feet, and if someone bumped into me and hit my arms, it was excruciating. They originally thought I had cancer. Not me. My wife. We lived in Jacksonville, Florida. She rarely gets sick, but has mild insomnia. Around Wednesday, she had a low fever and complained of aches and sweats at night and trouble sleeping. That weekend she wanted to see the doctor. I told her she probably had the flu, just was not used the aches, and she always has trouble sleeping. But if she was still feeling bad, Sunday we had go to a clinic. Saturday night she could not sleep, so we made an appointment for Sunday afternoon. But on our way there, sure enough, she is feeling better. Doctor checks her out. She is feeling fine now. No fever. He says she probably had meningitis but is recovering. I am due to go on a business trip to California the next day, Monday, and ask him if he thinks it is fine I go. He says, yeah, no problem. That evening, wife is eating and laughing and all is good. Monday morning I leave early. That afternoon, my neighbor calls and lets me know my wife was wandering in the street in a delirium. My wife did not know where she was, so the neighbor drove her to the ER. I book a flight home that night. The hospital checks her out. She has a fever. Her blood cell count is in the basement, and she is completely out of it mentally. They are not sure what is wrong, and a bunch of specialists start descending on her. I have to fill out a bunch of paperwork on her medical history, where we have been, etc. They think maybe it is some weird autoimmune disorder. Not good. She gets a bunch of transfusions and put on a cocktail of meds while they figure it out. Third day in the hospital, the infectious disease guy comes in. Blood parasite. Maybe tick-borne. She had been to the Midwest recently. Colder. Counted if she went walking in the woods or a park. Next day he comes in. Figured out the parasite. Why did not you tell me she left the country? Huh? She has not. Well, she has malaria. Malaria. I thought you could not get it in the US. You cannot. You need to go home and bring me her passport. What the heck? I retrieve her passport. CDC comes. There's a whole case study on her which they would not release to us. Mosquito traps set up around the neighborhood. Mysterious vans start driving by spewing clouds of stuff. My wife stays in the ICU for a week, but recovers just fine. If you look at the 2010 CDC Infectious Disease Report, you will see a discussion of malaria, and how the XX number of cases all are related to people recently returned from endemic areas, except for one woman in Duval County, Florida, who received it from a cryptic vector. Found a CDC malaria surveillance report from that year. Case 2. In November 2010, a woman aged 31 years sought treatment at the hospital emergency department for fever, severe headaches, nausea, vomiting, and malaise. She was admitted to the ICU for severe hyponatremia, thrombocytopenia, tachycardia, borderline splenomegaly, and epistaxis. Both the hospital and CDC confirmed a P. falciparum severe malaria infection with approximately 10% parasitemia. She was treated with oral quinine, clindamycin, and oral doxycycline, and recovered successfully. Probable routes of transmission were investigated. The patient stated that she had not traveled outside of the United States during the preceding 2 years and had no history of malaria. In 2008, She traveled to Nicaragua and stated that she had received malaria chemoprophylaxis at the time of her trip. She reported no history of blood transfusion or IV drug use. Mosquito trappings conducted around her home in Florida revealed no Plasmodium-infected mosquitoes, and no additional malaria cases in close contacts or persons residing in the area near her home. The origin of the infection remains undetermined. When I was 14 years old, I woke up one day with heavy stomach cramps. We called the hospital and they told us that I probably have a stomach flu and should go to the doctor next morning. After one of the worst nights ever, vomiting and sleeping next to the toilet, we went to the doctor. I had a fever of 40°C and was aching a lot. The doctor told me I had to go to ER and have it checked out because she thought my appendix was inflamed and causing the pain. We went to the ER and I stayed in the hospital for about 2 weeks. But they could not find anything. They treated me with broad-range antibiotics and after 2 weeks I was feeling a bit better and they told me to go home and recover. The night I got back from the hospital I went to bed and started hallucinating that I lived in a retirement home and that pirates were coming to steal our food. So I was flailing around trying to fend off pirates when my mother came in and asked what all the fuss was about. I told her what was going on and she looked at me like I had summoned a devil. She took my temperature and she instantly took me to the ER again. I had a 41°C fever. When we went back to the hospital I got treated immediately for inflammation and they did a wide range of tests again. They saw that something in my body was inflamed but they could not find it. I stayed in the hospital for about 2 more weeks when they finally found what was going on. My appendix was inflamed and burst the night I was having the hallucinations, but on all the scans they could not see my appendix. The doctor told me that if I came in 2 days later I would have died because of the pus flowing in my body. Apparently there is a 1% chance of all the appendix cases that the appendix is so stretched out that they could not see it on the scans, or that the area was so inflamed they did not see it. So after staying on antibiotics for about 2 more weeks they finally removed my appendix and all the pain was gone. I stayed in the hospital for over 4 weeks just because of my appendix and my bad luck on being that 1%. For my 7th birthday we went to Disneyland. They just happened to be having a car a day giveaway when we were there. For my 7th birthday, Mickey Mouse gave me a Pontiac Firebird. Do you still have the car? Nah. Since I was only 7 at the time. The car went to my mom. By the time I was old enough to drive, it was scrap. Did they sell the car and fund your education with her? Proceed. I am allergic to potatoes. Never met someone else who is, so I guess it is 1 in a million. Never eaten chips or fries. Not me, but my mom is allergic to potatoes. Never met someone else with a potato allergy except my mom. Wow. I was diagnosed with leukemia. I got a bacteria growth which killed the leukemia. A real 1 in 1 million chance. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. But, because he is his own worst enemy, the enemy of my friend is my enemy. So actually Jim is my enemy. But, how I met my wife. I am from the Netherlands. She is from the US. We met in Israel. It was my first weekend in Israel. Decided to go on a pub crawl to meet some people and have fun. As I am buying the ticket, my now wife walks up to the counter to also buy a ticket. The girl working there introduces us. We hit it off the first night, but I am leaving in 2 days to stay with friends of friends in the middle of the desert for 3 months. 2 days after I leave I lose my phone. Don't have any way to get back in touch with her. I had little money and could stay work with the people in the desert. But I kept thinking about her, so after a week I say I am leaving. Take the next bus, goes 3 times a week. At 5 a.m. and then a train to Tel Aviv. I had no idea how to find her, where to stay, and very little money. I emailed a couple hostels to find a work-stay agreement. Those jobs are very popular and usually planned months in advance. I get an email back when I arrive in Tel Aviv. I can come in for an interview because they have a spot. This is already ridiculously lucky. Right after the interview and dropping of my belongings, I went back to the first hostel to see if they would give me information. They wouldn't give me anything. Now I am at a loss. Tel Aviv is a city of more than 500,000 people. I don't know anyone and have little more than the clothes on my back. Kind of defeated, I start wandering around exploring the city. After a couple hours I get hungry and decide to treat myself to a restaurant. I am well out of the tourist area and find a place that is almost empty and rather cheap. I sit down, order a drink and something to eat. As I get my food, I see my now wife walking past the restaurant. She sees me, I see her. I am literally dumbstruck and just kind of grin and wave. Remember how I lost my phone? She didn't know that and just thought I ignored her. She waves and keeps walking. I throw like 200 shekels, way too much, in the table and sprint after her. Explained, and the rest is history. This is a great story. Glad you found each other. When I was a kid, I was chilling in the water of the Mediterranean Sea in Turkey. Suddenly I felt an awful burning sensation on my stomach and my legs. I looked like I had been brutally sandpapered and I got a 40°C-104F fever. Turns out I made contact with a jellyfish, and later found out that it had not happened on that beach for 10 years or so. I was just extremely unlucky. What beach was it? I got a really minor jellyfish sting when I lived in Turkey also. No idea on my rarity at that beach though. No sure about the odds on this one, but I survived a non-survivable plane crash. I was on an old Po-2 famous for being very safe and uncrushable on a tour of the desert in western China when I was like 7. My father's friend who hosted me and piloted the plane didn't survive, but somehow I got out with a concussion and apparently passed out for almost a day in the middle of the desert, in the wreckage of the crash. 50 kilometers from the town airport, on the edge of the desert. The people who found me were some tree planters. They plant greens in the desert to protect towns from sandstorm. A lot of people live in these desert towns in China do this. Found me on their way picking up a shipment, and the only reason they looked was BC they were making a bet on how fast the egg would cook in the sand and went off the road to test. That is awesomely unbelievable. Did it make you afraid to fly? Or fearless? Nah. To be honest, I didn't remember enough for it to actually cause like a traumatic experience or something. One day you'll be making eggs and it will all come back in a dramatic flashback starring Nicolas Cage. I slept wrong one night and pinched a nerve in my neck so severely I lost the right side of my body. It just went silent like it wasn't there for months. I woke up in the worst pain I've ever experienced and couldn't talk, move or do anything. The ER doctor thought I was having a stroke. My doctor had never seen a case as severe as mine and it was purely a freak accident. Recovery took months, but I have used my leg and hand again, with some numbness. Other than pain and spasms, I am mostly back to normal. I hate reading stuff like this. If you're not safe lying asleep on a mattress, where are you safe? Had 2 11 centimeters benign tumors growing in my spine, resulting in gradual paralysis from my chest down. They had no idea how the tumors formed. Surgery took 11 hours when they thought it would take 4 because the tumors were so complexly woven throughout my spine. I now have pretty much half a spine and chronic pain, but take it over losing my life from paralysis and being unable to breathe. My dad has this, minus one of the tumors, experienced not so severe back pain his whole life. One day it just became unbearable, but doctors said you're just getting old. Go home and take some Advil. LOL. My dad said frick that. Went to a private clinic and had an MRI done on his back. Well, didn't you know it? Tumor in his spine. About 3 days later, he was on the operating table with one of the best neurosurgeons in the country. Surgery took about 9 hours. Poor sob felt so much better after the surgery that the next day, he walked and met my mom and I at the hospital doors when we arrived. I am happy he did that. So are we. His quality of life increased vastly after it. No more back pain ever. He says even old man back pain is nothing compared to what he was feeling. The first one, I do not know about the exact odds, but I was born on 7/7/77 and weighed 7 pounds 7 ounces. Sadly though, I clocked in at 6:50 a.m. The other is that around the age of 14 I started to notice the outsides of both of my feet starting to get much wider. After a couple of years of buying expensive custom-made shoes, they decided to perform surgery on my feet. Turned out I had extra muscle growth along with something else I do not recall at the moment. My podiatrist told me he submitted a scholarly article on it. May also have been genetic, as when my dad was 3, he developed an extra toe growing out of each one of his big toes. I have got the middle toes on both feet webbed. So did Stalin. Quack. This feels like a fun fact but at the same time a threat. Agree. That is a significantly menacing quack. I passed out from laughing too hard once. It was truly a 1 in a million thing. When I was a teenager I had just started working at the local Sears Auto Center Express Lube shop and on day 1 did a quick orientation and my first oil change. The manager walked away when he felt I was good to go and the oil change went well. Fast forward a few days later my manager asked me to come into his office and he explained that the oil filter I had used had one huge flaw. I did not know what it was and it turned out the filter was pressed on backwards into the filter can and it would not allow oil to flow in and it damaged the motor. They had to purchase a new motor for the person and I still kept my job. He said it was a 1 in a million chance that would have happened and it did on my first oil change. They have insurance for a reason. All sorts of weird stuff happened at our Walmart. Defective tires, filters, oil, you name it. They don't hold the employees accountable for their weird stuff.